New archaeological research has narrowed down the timeline of early Māori settlement of Aotearoa New Zealand using radiocarbon dating for decades. Initial human settlement has been estimated to have happened between the 12th and 14th centuries. But Dr. Magdalena Bunbury from James Cook University in Australia has found evidence that settlement took place as early as the mid-13th century. Dr. Magdalena Bunbury is a postdoctoral research fellow at James Cook University in North Queensland, researching past societies and heritage, and she joins us now from Cairns. Kia ora, Dr. Bunbury. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, some believe that Māori settled in Aotearoa, New Zealand, or East Polynesia more than 700 years ago. What's changed? What have you found to suggest that Māori arrived earlier than this?
Yeah, so it's very exciting. It's the first time in Australian archaeology that we are able to produce a very fine timeline of the first 250 years of settlement. So we know now that the North Island was settled between 1250 and 1270, and the South Island decade later between 1285 and 1290. And we were able to construct this really precise timeline because we were looking at a really large corpus of radiocarbon dates, like around about 2,250 spread across the country. We analyzed like a variety of material, charcoal dates, marine shell, and also like more eggshell and so on and so forth. So the difference is between our study and the previous study, that previous study were more focused on one particular material type. For instance, it was argued so like rat bone represent the spread of rats, but not necessarily human arrival. I mean, it has been argued rats arrived with the humans, but nevertheless, it doesn't really tell us much about actually the human occupation. And it's the same with more eggshell. So when we find more eggshell and analyze it, we have sort of like a more hunting activity, but not necessarily like human occupation, like when did humans live in the caves, or what kind of activities they did, like when did they cook and so forth. So basically, using a variety of material enabled us to produce this new precise timeline.
Okay, so you're able to retrieve different types of materials, take them to Australia, and then you're able to research them from these materials.
So we didn't take them to Australia. What you do is, like other people actually analyze the radiocarbon dates. You send them to a laboratory. So what we did is we used all the radiocarbon dates that are published already in the literature, and then basically applied a variety of statistics to get to these new models.
So how come there's such a discrepancy between the timelines North Island and South Island? What does your research tell us about this?
Sure. So we can now say that the ancestors of Maoris arrived in the North Island due to the evidence, like due to lots of radiocarbon dates, like modeled in Bayesian models. So as I mentioned, like we have radiocarbon dates for different activities. So we can now say, okay, they arrived in the North Island, but then they moved within a decade to the South Island because they come from East Polynesian islands. Yeah, they're really tropical. So New Zealand is a bit different. New Zealand is large, has a diverse environment, and it also has a different climate. So they started with agriculture, but it wasn't perhaps as successful. So and then they discovered, oh, there's all these more birds in the South Island that is easily game, like we can hunt them, and they also had seals and penguins. So a large proportion of the society decided to move on to the South Island and basically live off more and seals, and of course also on top of that of marine resources.
And so did this help with specific areas that were more heavily populated than others in the early days?
Yeah, sure. So the early sites were more located on the coast and near riverbeds. This is something that happens quite frequently in island environments. So you go to like the, let's say like the easy accessible environments and the easy resources you can get. And then later when you want to stay on, you need to think a little bit more closely. Okay, so how do we survive here now? We need to do something else. We can't just like pick, tropical islands, like we can't just pick the coconuts and then they're all gone or something like this. So this is like how agriculture starts. And but yeah, unfortunately, the Moor got extinct very rapidly within like 100 to 150 years. So there was like a little bit of population pressure and adaptation yet again.
And I believe your research also tracked historical events like the Little Ice Age, in times where the Māori population grew at a rapid rate, which also put pressure on societies. What more can you tell us about this?
When the population was in the South Island and they did all this moor hunting, unfortunately, moor hunting became uneconomic at a certain time, like around 1400 to 1420. And on top of that, between 1350 and 1420, we now have a precise date of the start of the so-called Little Ice Age. The Little Ice Age is a bit of a exaggeration. So it wasn't like really like frosty or something, but it became considerably colder and also wetter. And this is quite significant because New Zealand is already temperate, and particularly the South Island. So the population got under immense pressure. Like population first grew massively in the South Island, but then with the lack of moor and also colder temperatures, a large amount of the population had to relocate to the North Island, because the North Island is warmer, but also it is more easily, like the soils are easily for horticulture, so they could grow their crops like sweet potatoes and taro and other crops.
So where are the sites in New Zealand that these samples were taken from for your radiocarbon dating, and how reliable and accurate are they?
So we took the samples from around 435 sites in the roundabout in the North Island and 145 in the South Island. And the sites are all, so we used all sites that represent human activities. And these can be like caves, rock shelters, but also fortified settlements like pass. This can be shell midden and so-called moor hunting activity sites, like basically where moor was butchered. So, but these can be also pits or any kind of evidence we have from human activities.
Look, I could talk to you a lot more, actually. I find this kind of fascinating. Dr. Magdalena Bunbury, so we must talk more, from James Cook University in North Queensland. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing some of your research. Much appreciated.
Thank you.